Good evening. Good evening. Welcome, everyone. We're live again for yet another episode of Across the Diaspora. My name is Zoe Sarbo, for those who do not know me, and I have a special guest this evening who's going to introduce herself in a quick second. But before we get started, I'm going to give some people time to start joining in, but we're going to be talking about natural hair. I am particularly excited about this topic. Okay, I'm excited about every topic, but I'm excited about this topic because hair is such an important topic of conversation in our community these days, right? How we should wear it and how we should style it and how we should cover it or don't cover it. So let's have that conversation about how we wear our hair, why it's important, and where this comes from. And for those of you who are joining from YouTube or just from Facebook, please feel free at some point to go over to the channel and subscribe, follow, like all that fun stuff. Because it's really helping in building this community that we're building out here. And as you can notice, I may seem a little overdressed, but I'm just showcasing the new kimonos that I have. Shameless plug.
Okay. They're cute.
Thank you,
You're
thank you,
welcome.
thank you. So let's get started. So tell us a little bit about who you are.
Absolutely. My name is Essence. I go by Essence China, and I am a natural hairstylist. I've been in the natural hair industry for over 20 years, and I really got passionate about doing natural hair early, when I was like a teenager. And I ended up just taking that whole path and opening a salon and going through that whole process. And so just very passionate about natural hair.
Yes,
Mm,
yes. That 20 years is a long time. So I can see like you transitioning, making that transition is yeah.
yeah,
I put in my time.
you're right. I pay
Okay.
my
You
dues.
paid your dues. You paid your dues. And we're gonna talk about that.
Uh,
We're gonna talk about those dues that you paid.
mm,
So I've known you for a few years actually. I think I knew your Elliot, right? Your brother. We
yeah.
went to ASU together, and I was living in the Tempe Mesa area, and then I started going to your shop, and you did my hair. We connected there.
Mhm.
And then I moved to Phoenix, and we kind of separated it for a bit. But I have been following you. We run into each other,
Right.
random places and spaces. But I, definitely kept in touch with, your journey and the changes you've made. And we're definitely going to talk about your podcast
Okay.
and your inspiration for the direction you're going with your podcast.
Mhm.
So I'm excited to talk about that. But I think you have an incredible story
Thank
that
you.
needs to be shared, that needs to be told. That, as more people move to Arizona and, as we had these conversations about here, that the element of the history, especially in Arizona, is told. So I don't know if you can talk a little bit about how you got started and the work that you did for the
Okay.
growth of it in Arizona.
Absolutely. So I started doing hair in my parents' laundry room. First I started doing my brother's hair, Elliot. He was
Oh,
my
you
he was
did?
my guinea pig. And
Oh,
so I tried any and everything on his hair, and then that transitioned into me doing my high school friend's hair, and I
okay,
started
okay.
making money. And that's when I realized, like, okay,
Nice.
there's something in this. Not
Yeah.
only do I enjoy it, but I also can make money from it.
Mm-hmm.
And so my parents allowed me to pretty much like turn our laundry room into a salon, like a makeshift salon. So I had chairs, I had a waiting area, I had all of my
Oh,
products.
that's
And
nice.
so it was really cool. But to be honest with you, I didn't really see like a future in it. I just thought it was a hustle. It was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do this while I'm, in school or whatever.
Yeah,
But I didn't
yeah.
really see, future for it. But what ended
Mm-hmm.
up happening was I moved to Maryland in 2000. And when I moved out there, I was trying to go to school and, go to a HBCU. And so things didn't necessarily pan out, but I always found myself coming back to hair.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
so I kind of, not kind of, I had an encounter with the divine, and I just felt led to come back to Arizona. And I fought it because I did not want to come back.
Oh,
It
you
was
didn't?
really
What state did you
absolutely not.
go?
I was in DC,
Oh, yes,
girl.
yeah. Understandable.
I was
Understandable.
loving it and living it.
Yeah.
But I felt just this pull to come back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
with that, it took me a while to surrender to that, but I did. And when I came back, my mother was like, well, what are you gonna do with your life? And I'm like, I don't know. All I know is that I feel this draw to come back and I'm gonna see what I'm gonna do. But my mother, she's a nurse, and so she led me to go to nursing school. And so I enrolled in nursing school, but at the same time, I still felt like I was supposed to and wanted to do hair. And so I called the state board of cosmetology when I moved back. And I pretty much told them what I did. I'm like, I've been doing hair professionally for a few years now. I do braids, locks, and twists. What do I need to do in order to be essentially legal in the state? And they said that you have to get a license. And at that time, I felt it was seriously like unfair, right? To be able to have to go to cosmetology school for a year and a half, pay over 10,000 plus dollars just to learn cuts and colors and perms and all the things I knew I would not be practicing. On top of that, nor they didn't test or essentially teach braiding, locking, and twisting, which I was already proficient in. And so at that point, I just hung up the phone and I just like, okay, I don't know what to do because I don't see myself going that route. And then I just had this divine inspiration to look for a law firm to represent my case because I felt like I had something to fight.
Yes. Oh, wow. And so you made the decision at that point that you wanted to push, right, to be able to have the chance to, was it to be able to do hair at home? Was that like not allowed, or was it be to have that certification based on the natural hair and in that area?
So essentially, you were not supposed to be doing any exchange of services for money, whether you were in a salon or not in a salon. So technically, I mean, there have been women who have actually been like locked up, back in the day, when I say back in there, 15, 20 years ago for doing services out of their home, providing a services for money.
Oh, so you had to be in an established studio. Okay.
But then on top of that, you had to have a license. So you had to go through that system in order to be legal.
So there goes the financial aspect, because not too many people have $10,000 to be able to. Okay. And so what was that fight like? How did you put that case together?
Yeah, so I contacted the Institute for Justice, and they were like a nationwide law firm who had just opened a Phoenix location like months before I contacted them. And they had already set the precedent in another state. So that was just already crazy. And so when I contacted them, the lawyer came and met with me. And essentially, I had moved back in August of '03. And we filed Essence Farmer versus the State Board of Cosmetology in December. So within months of me being back. So after that happened, we essentially like decided to move forward. We never even actually made it to court because Janet Napolitano at the time, she was the governor.
Yes.
And months later, she heard about the case and just thought it was ridiculous. Like, wait, she just wants to braid hair? Like, okay. So she ended up amending the law and signing off on it, which changed it. It opened up the doors for all braiders, locticians, natural hairstylists in the state of Arizona to be able to do hair without the state board regulations.
So I do know that there are people who still feel as though they need to go to cosmetology school. Does that mean that they want to be versed in a wider range of, with the skill sets for that career, or is it much more inclusive now?
I honestly don't think it's that much more inclusive. I think that there are hairstyles that do want to have a versatility in whatever they offer. But when it comes to braiding, locking, and twisting, and understanding natural hair, you're not getting that foundation. Now, don't get me wrong, you're getting the sanitation, you're getting the structure of hair, and those things but they're only covering that for like a couple of weeks out of a year and a half. And you really can go and get a book and teach. You know what I'm saying? If you genuinely want to learn, you can learn that yourself.
Yeah, without having to go to school to do that. Okay. So then at that point, you were able to then freely do it from your home, and then you grew from there. Oh, wow. Well, that's good. Well, thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for doing that. That is huge. And I'm sure that maybe do you feel it as that being as part of the calling for you to get that work done, or?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was trying to stay in DC first and foremost.
Yes,
I was not trying to move. So for me to move and then within a space of time, months, change a law at the young age that I did, to me, I knew that was just a part of like what I was supposed to do. It was my work to do for sure.
Oh, okay. So how has the natural hair, I know we call it a natural hair movement, but how have you seen that evolved the space of from the part of those hairstylists and the technicians, the growth in that industry. Have you seen that, like the burst and the growth of hairstylists in India?
Yeah, to be honest with you, even moving back to Arizona, to me, it was just like the irony that I'm going to open a natural hair salon here in Phoenix because nobody, I mean, locks, you seen them far few and in between at that time. We're talking '03. And, but I didn't understand I was a forerunner and a pioneer. So just when we're looking at Phoenix and even further out in the nationwide, we have seen like a great growth of women wearing their hair natural and just reconnecting. And obviously it comes from a lot of different reasons. Some women are going natural because it's a choice, and others don't have a choice because of medical issues or certain things that are just like, okay, I have to do this.
And I've been looking at a lot of videos online about the natural hair movement, right? And when I saw this movement happen, when it blew up, I think, what was it, like I said 2018, 2019, 20, more for the most part. I was so excited because I felt it was an organic thing. I felt as though we were not influenced as Black women by outside, influences, for lack of a better word, to help us to move in that direction, right? Seeing that it's such a political statement of being natural in public spaces outside of your home and your community, right? And so for me, I felt because it was so organic that this is, it was amazing, and it's, much more long lasting than the 70s Afro movement, the Black Power space. Do you think that natural movement has plateaued? Is it still happening? How are you seeing that happening right now?
Yeah, I feel like there was like a burst of growth, in the early 2000s. Pretty much like around the time that I used to open my salon, that's when I started to see there's like an influx of women just going natural, going natural. I still feel like there's way more room for growth. And I think because we're being exposed even more. And I think that exposure gives women the opportunity to see, oh, I don't have to necessarily wear my hair this way. And then obviously, so many women are thinking about not just their hair, but they're thinking about every part of themselves and how, these chemicals are impacting us and so for that reason, I feel like it can only grow, but I think it has like slowed down a little bit.
Yeah, and I feel a little bit salty about the slowing down part. I'm a little bit passionate about wearing natural hair because of not only, and I guess it's a spiritual journey for everyone. I feel like if that it's for those who are not used to being in an environment, because I know have people from back home who would be listening to this, and so for the most part we're used to the natural hair. I grew up with cornrows. Like my mother, like every Sunday or every other Sunday, that was the routine because I have a younger sister, and so her routine was she would and we go come home from church. She'd wash both of our hair, dry it, cornrow and whatever cute style, and got us ready for school for the next morning, right? So that was our weekly routine, or every other week. I don't know if I can do that, right? So wearing cornrows growing up was kind of
a thing,
So being here and realizing that it's the reality is the reverse. I feel as though that struggle of should I not, do I have the option, should it be intentional, should it be just organic, that conversation is very interesting for me. And for me it's like why not,
right?
It's why not. And so to what degree should, as a community culture, is it a normalized that, hey, wear your hair how it's growing out, or should it be wear it as you please?
To what degree?
Is it should be an expectation, or?
I mean, I think we can come from different angles. I think that a lot of women, and I'm speaking just from being a hairstylist, a lot of women started to go natural because of their daughters. And so as their daughters started to go to school, and say they go to a school that's predominantly white, their daughters are coming back and saying, well, I want my hair like that, or you know what I mean. And so for the woman to say, okay, I want you to wear your hair natural, but you can't say that reflecting something different. And so I think that the norm is going to start in the home. It's going to start with a woman so it can continue to pass down, because I don't know if we as a community can, it really has to start in the home, you know? Um, I wish it would be that way,
Yeah.
you know, because I feel like if we're just talking about, say, the chemicals, just the harshness and what it can, you know, we know that it brings about fibroids. We know it brings about a whole lot of different things. And so from that standpoint, I feel like we as a collective should be just against that completely. And then, you know, when we start thinking about like, you know, the wigs and the weaves and all that, you know, obviously we've even talked about that. Some women are having to wear that because of the damage that they've had because of the chemicals, you know. So if we can get ahead of the curve and really like not necessarily preach it, but just inform and educate these young girls, because I feel like the young girls are so influenced by what they see and what they think is hot or what they think is, you know, say
Yeah.
appealing. And so if they
Yeah.
have their own choice and really ask themselves, what do I actually like, you know, outside of influences, I think that that would also make it shift as well.
But at a young age, we don't really know what we actually like, right? And
True.
so what guides us is what's, as you said, is in our immediate environment. So right, if we're in an immediate environment that is all about the natural hair look, right, and your parents being dedicated to make sure it's done, is combed right, and using the right products, then that will become something that you know naturally will draw to. But if it's not that much of an intention in the home, but then the larger society is like, here are these other options. I feel as though because of wanting to be a part of society and peer pressure, maybe, because I'm thinking about middle school age children, girls. And do you see that happening because the social media um, influencers, right? They're not showing, because we don't have India Ari anymore, right? We don't have Jill Scott anymore. We don't have the Erica Badu who's out there. Is there anybody?
Listen, I
The
don't even know
Bailey's
what's going. And
girls, Chloe Bailey girls, maybe.
yeah, okay, they have their locks, yeah, for sure. And I mean, they're still here, they're still there. They're just not necessarily in the forefront, right?
Exactly, they're not in the
But you know, when
forefront.
we're thinking about the dominant culture, yeah, they're not seeing it.
You're not seeing it at all,
No.
right? So unless it's what is being reinforced at home, and I feel like that's, for me, I'm feeling that because when I go into public spaces and I'm looking at the younger girls and how they present themselves, it's not with that aura of, you know, the natural look.
Right.
Yeah,
That's true.
it's the aesthetic of what you see, you know, in
hmm
popular culture.
Which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. You know, I think we even talked about just that authenticity and just tapping into, you know, just who you are just naturally, you know, and really just loving that. But I think it's very strong of a pressure that comes against, you know, these young girls. And so why you're gonna conform, you know,
Yeah.
which is so unfortunate. But I think if they've been raised with that standard, even if they decide to do something outside, you know, as they get, you know, become more mature, they'll realize like, okay, this is the reason why my mother was telling me this, you know?
Yeah.
But to your point, it was Lauren Hill for me. Like when Lauren Hill came out looking just amazing, wearing her locks, that was the first time I actually seen, you know, an image to where it was reflected to me like I can wear my hair, you know, in locks. Like I just didn't see it. You know, you like you said, you coming from where you came from, you seen it. It was all the time. But you know, if we had more of those images, I definitely feel like that would help
It would
reinforce.
help reinforce it. Yeah. So now it's I feel like in listening to, you know, the influencers in popular in on the social media, talking about natural people who wear natural hair becoming bullies. Like, do you feel that? I've been told that a lot of times. Do you think those who are natural are imposing their belief on others who may not necessarily lean that way?
I think there are people that can have a tendency to maybe come off that way. I told you I sent you my poem and I was just like,
Yes.
you know, though I still feel the same way, my delivery may have been different, you know, but I definitely have been called a natural hair Nazi because I was like, listen, you need to wear your hair natural. It's the best thing for you. And, you know, But now I'm just like, yeah, it is free choice, but I would hope that at some point you would consider it, because I think it's one thing just to have it like as an option. Okay, I choose to wear this or I choose to do this, but I still love me and I still love my natural hair. But when you have women who have no clue what their natural hair looks like, or they've been hiding so long that they can't even connect with themselves, that's where I kind of find like, okay, we got to dig deeper and figure out, well, what actually is going on.
And let's talk about a little bit about the history, right? Why are we at this point, right? Why do we, as Black women, have to have this conversation and debate, right, about how to wear our hair? For someone who grew up here, did you grow up in Arizona?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what was that like for you growing up in Arizona? And why do you feel that this movement was so important?
Well, number one, I went to a predominantly all white school, right? So it was my siblings and maybe a few other neighbors. And so, yes, we had our parents in the household, but as soon as we walk out that door, we're keep on, being reflected on us, just something that's not us. And then on top of that, the standard of beauty. And so, even as a young girl, you want to be liked by boys and you want, and so, well, we find that they like that. So if they like that, then how do I become more like that? And just as a child, just being impressionable. And so I think for me, it was definitely very, very strong of a pressure that I had to almost fight against. But I also had very strong minded parents. My father was very Black conscious. And so that helped me to, I guess, stay true to who I was, even though I still wore perms for, a certain amount of time. But it was definitely challenging and difficult. But once I realized the pressure that I was fighting, when I'm talking about the pressure, I'm talking about just the images that are force fed and portrayed to us. Once I realized that, that's when I completely just was like, I'm not doing this no more. So I might have permed my hair maybe 3 years and wore weaves, but I was a hairstylist, so I was always experimenting. But after that time frame, I mean, I locked my hair by the time I was 20.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was the same thing for me, because even though, growing up back home in Guyana, when I was younger, my mother did our hair, but at some point we decided we want to get a perm too, because that was considered, the cool thing. Everybody wanted that long, that straight hair. Let's see how long we can get our hair, right?
Right.
So yes, I did get the perm for like 2-3 years, and then no, we're not doing this. And then so switched into just the natural hairstyles, the braids, and then eventually locking it, which was the best decision
Ever.
I've ever made. Best decision. And I think that, I like the point that you made, that if, you as a woman, that you understand the importance of natural hair, that you're connected to your sense of self, but you just made it, you have the flexibility of making the decision of how you want to wear your hair, is completely different from a lot of women just not knowing how to wear their hair, how to style it, not knowing how to manage it, the products to use, and not being afraid to um, embrace that side of them. Because I've noticed that even in some family members that I have and friends I've talked to, they're like, "Oh, that look is for you."
And you only. As
Yeah,
if it's not for me.
It's not a, like, I'm like, you're just as pigmented as I am,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, what do you mean that's your thing?
That's for everybody. That's the hair that grew out of your head too. Like,
and I see, I still hear that and have those conversations, and so like, what would you say to a young lady like that,
who has
who has not
that
been able
mindset?
to that mindset and embrace, the look of, how she would look with her own natural hair?
Oh, that's challenging. One, I would kind of go back to, do you think that God made a mistake? You know what I mean? Like, if this is how you came into the earth and this is your hair, why would you think that what you came into this earth with would be anything less than beautiful and gorgeous? It's just how you see it. So I'll be challenging the perspective, and the decision making behind that perspective. And we've definitely had, a lot of young girls come into the salon, and women too, that dealt with it so much, but some of them wanted to be natural, but they were concerned about how they'd be received
Mm.
by their partner, by their job. You know what I mean? So it's all about how's everybody else going to receive this, because it's hard for me to even look in the mirror and to accept this, but then even more so.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
receive it.
Hmm.
Have you had to deal with, situations in Arizona where comments may have been made, or you feel as though you're not accepted due to, no, probably didn't even notice it.
No, because again, being a hairstylist and I was always doing my hair, I felt very confident. By the time I actually, it was probably about a year and a half into my locks, I felt very confident with my hair. And I was like, this is the only thing for me. I think when I first started, and even to be honest with you, when I lived in Maryland and I first started my locks and they were short, I felt like I got a lot more criticism and pushback from our own people, for real,
Oh,
about, like I remember being on a bus and being laughed at or something like that, but I didn't think nothing of it. I was just like, whatever, I like my hair and this is the choice I've made. But it's unfortunate because, we've all been to some degree programmed.
yeah. Yes, yeah, that is, and speaking of that programming, now we have options of, and that's how I titled it, wigs, weaves, and wraps, right?
Hmm.
And I just, in that term, there's tension and it's very loaded in that phrase, but I wanted to use it because that seems to be the, the it seems to be connected to, all right, are you natural or not? And so with the weave part especially, do you find that as the women stopped using the perm and the straighteners,
Hmm.
that these amazingly beautiful weaves, right, and wigs, I've never worn a wig before, but like some of them, like, oh, I would wear that,
Yeah, it's cute.
right? It's cute. Like, I would, like, that's cute, right?
uh,
Do you think that that started to be pushed more and became much more accessible? um because I felt as though anytime as a black community we go in a direction that's more helpful for us, there's always some kind of
just in case.
no, 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 no.
Y'all really figure out who you are. Let's go ahead and inject something
Yes.
else into
So,
there.
so has the wig phenomenon, I think, that's happening now, has
Mhm.
that always been there, or is this just a new thing where everybody has access to buy these and sell these amazing wigs?
Yeah, I think there was a shift, especially with the lace wigs and all that
Yes, the
stuff,
lace
and
wigs,
they
yes.
look even all the more,
They,
natural, and they made me even be easier. And so a lot of women, they say, well, I'm natural under here, but it's like, but do you wear your natural hair? So I think that was just progression of wigs, and then we get into the lace fronts, and people want them slick edges, and
yeah.
and so people gravitate to that.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, um, with the gravitating to the wigs, I understand that there are people who have medical conditions,
Right.
right? But it seems to, what are the different causes of the need to wear wigs?
Hmm.
Um, because it seems to, like, a whole lot more women here in the United States have the need to wear it. And so I want to acknowledge that medical aspect. Like, what are the different
Yeah.
health reasons that are connected to the need to wear?
I mean, for the most part, there's alopecia, and so there's different forms of alopecia. But from those who I know, they have to wear it, or not necessarily have, they still choose to, because some of them, they can still wear their hair bald if they chose to, but for more comfort reasons, they may wear a wig. It's because of the alopecia. And I even had an encounter with a young girl. She was not even 21, 22, and I mean, she had no, I mean, clean bald, on the top. And it was from, an improper install of like a weave ponytail or something like
Oh,
that.
wow.
And so
It just broke her hair, like, just broke.
completely, I don't know if she got some sort of infection because of the bobby pins, but
Yes,
from
yes.
that point on, she never had hair growth there.
Uh-huh. Oh, wow.
And so because of that, she chose to wear, the wigs, but it's because of the hair loss. Now, obviously, this is not medical, but I find a lot of women just do it because of convenience. Convenience, and outside of that, it's just because they feel they look the best that way. They look their best that way.
There, I have a girlfriend, right?
Hmm.
Not gonna be too specific because I don't want them to know I'm talking about them. But I have a girlfriend, right, who only wears wigs, and we had this conversation briefly. And there is this comment made that my hair doesn't grow, and it's just easier, right?
Mhm.
It Do you think it's we just haven't learned how to take care of our hair,
Mhm.
right? Or is it that we just want to naturally just embrace that other look? Because why does a wig have to look like the long straight? Right. For me,
That's the question.
because somebody said today, yes, we used to wear wigs back in Africa, but the wigs look like afros.
Mhm.
The wigs does not look like long flowing, European style here.
Right.
So if we want to wear wigs, I'm seeing more of they're not the more natural looking ones, but for the
Mhm.
most part, it's the long, silky, straight ones, which is completely opposite of our identity. So, is there a market or a possibility to have wigs that's a more natural look, or
Yeah, and there are, but I think that if we've been shoved in our face that that is not attractive,
yeah,
men don't want that. You may lose your job, or all of the negative things that come along with wearing your hair natural, be it myth or whatever. Those are some of the reasons that are subconscious that women are still gravitating to these looks, and we have to recognize like who runs the media,
yeah,
right? So the media is going to play these images. And so just like that doll experiment with the young kids was like, well, what doll is good and what doll is bad? And they always pick the black doll to be bad and the white. Why is that? Right. And so in the same way, as adults, why are black women choosing, these things that are completely different than who they are? And
absolutely.
right. So, and what does that say about how you feel about yourself? So I think it's so nuanced and complicated, but for me, I think I just rejected that. I was like, I
Yeah,
don't want anything. I want only the thing that makes me unique. you know
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And to say that our hair is different than any other group of people, to me, that just speaks to how rare we are, how valuable we are. And because of that, I'm rocking my hair like this to the end of time.
And that's a unique way of looking at it, right?
Hmm.
But the more we talk, I'm beginning to realize that if you see your hair or that way of wearing your hair as just not something that you can do, it's probably a reflection of how you see or accept yourself in your full glory,
Hmm.
right? Because you might love yourself but not able to embrace your hair.
Hmm.
um I feel is how you maybe seeing, maybe that element of beauty and being beautiful not does not include the naturalness of our hair.
That's murky waters, because I still feel that I think that's what self-acceptance is.
Yeah.
And self-love is to look yourself in the mirror, no matter who you are, how you look, your weight, your height, you know what I mean? And love exactly what you see in the mirror, right? And then ask yourself, like, what are the areas about myself that I can't fully accept, and why is that? And so while it's hard to have that conversation, because no, I'm not saying that you don't love yourself, you don't accept yourself, but there's depths, right? I feel.
Yep.
But you know, like I said, get a little
Should men have any input
hmm.
in suggesting their ideal of how a woman should wear their hair, right?
If
Because
it's there, if it's his little bit, I mean, oh, go ahead. Let me let
no,
you
no, you
finish.
you go ahead.
Should they have any input? I mean, I think, any and everybody, a man has his preferences,
Yeah.
and based on his preferences, he chooses the woman that, fits his preferences. Um, and it's funny because I've had women come into the salon and they're married, and they have now made the personal decision to go natural, and they're not sure how their husband will accept it, or if they decided to go wear their hair in locks. But what I have found for the women who decided to wear locks, like over time, even though their husband may have not been like open to it, he falls in love with their locks, right? um so I think that it's really specific to that individual dynamic.
Hmm. But I'm, as a single person, right,
Hmm.
in that space of of this back and forth banter that we're having between black men and black women, right? I hear a lot from men saying wear your hair natural, blah 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 blah,
Hmm.
and women responding, well, that's, it's none of your business, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
um do we, as women, because a lot of the things that we do is in response to, are we going to be accepted, right? Are we
Mm-hmm.
going
So
to
our
get the
counterparts.
the attention? And so, do we take that into consideration, that
Well,
knowing that our men appreciate it or not?
mm-hmm. Let me say this. I think that most men that I've had conversations with prefer natural,
Yeah.
right? And so if they prefer natural, then I think that speaks to something, you know. Um, I think that there should be some level of consideration, even though you have your own decision. But I'm not making my decision based off of maybe your preference. I'm doing this for me,
Yeah.
okay? I do
Yeah.
it because I love it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think.
That's
Now,
valid.
what do you think?
I think that, okay, as we get older, right, in the teenage years, when we're impressed by our peers,
Mm-hmm.
right? As we get older, we start going into social spaces and we recognize what the men respond to. In my experience, when men say they want natural hair, they want a specific texture. Oh, specific texture.
Mm-hmm.
That is different. We're gonna answer that in a second, Victoria. Um, that so let me say this: when I first moved to Arizona, I realized right away what it means to be black in Arizona.
Okay.
Right? We as black women, we know what that means, right? Not being acknowledged the same way, not being recognized the same way. And so being aware of that, you want to, like, okay, what is wrong with me? What is it that I need to change of myself, blah blah blah. And so in that regard, there are women who do things with the hope that they will get the attention of the male,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so for me, it's, if the men in our community are saying, hey, we appreciate our women in natural here in their natural beauty, I think that speaks volumes in helping us in making that personal decision,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we don't have to, because it does help us feel even more confident
Right.
and emboldened, because we know that our male partners will appreciate it,
Right.
because we are part of a larger community and not necessarily just individuals just moving through.
That's true.
So I do believe that we should acknowledge,
Mm-hmm.
because we want men to acknowledge our needs and desires and what we think is ideal in a man,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I think it's fair that we take it into
Mm-hmm.
consideration.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's fair. But so to say, like, it's none of your business, maybe a bit harsh. Now, what do you think about particular natural hair texture?
I do agree to probably to a large extent. I think that, the idea and the umbrella of natural, there's a spectrum,
Yes, there
right?
is, because we fall in a long spectrum. Yeah.
But I also feel that, sometimes you hear the word natural and sometimes people think unkept. They don't think, okay, you can wear your hair natural and it still can be stylish and it still can be. So I think that, you know, women who go to the salon and they get their hair done and they're wearing it fly, it's for the man who's going to appreciate that, right? Not every man is going to appreciate this spectrum of natural. And some of them are saying, yes, I do want a woman to be natural, but it has to be, not too kinky, not too coily, more of a looser curl. You know what I mean? But that's just what he's preferring.
Mm.
Yeah.
So we don't take offense to it.
I don't, because he ain't talking to me.
Yes,
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like
yes,
I'm just not your, your taste or your type. And that's
yes.
okay, because I think that's, for me, the larger issue that I feel like so many people are walking around trying to appease other people, that they're not being true. That's what I feel, right? And I think the more true you are, the more you will attract that which you know what I'm saying? Like belongs to you, so to speak. And so I think that so many people are wondering why, okay, well, why am I not making these connections or making these matches? But it's like, but are you being true? Are you being authentic? You know what I'm saying? Because otherwise, like, these connections are shallow, so to speak, right? So I can go all off on that, but I just feel that ultimately we have to be true. And I feel like, I ain't even gonna say the percent of population. I'm not even talking about us. I'm talking about the percentage of the whole world understanding what it means to be true, to yourself and learning and loving and accepting that
But how do we do that though?
regardless.
How do we get to that point if, for generations, if the women presented themselves in a certain way because that was the idea of beauty, the standard of beauty,
Yeah.
right? And so now that we're trying to make that switch, like where do we go to find that true self and love of self, but
Hmm.
also to find the information of how to get to that point of taking care of the hair and that process and the products and all that, because we're all
Hmm.
going into YouTube listening to somebody who
Right.
may or may not be giving us the right information that is right for us. So how,
Hmm.
those are two kind of different questions, but how, yeah, how.
Right. Well, to address the latter, there are so many natural hair salons, right? And these natural hair salons have the information, they have the products, they have, and I think YouTube is cool, but we also know that, in any given industry or topic, there's a whole lot of information that is not necessarily credible or trustworthy. And so you need to go somewhere where you can actually build a relationship with somebody, know if they're expert, and learn your hair. There are resources out there. So I would say that would be, the first part is to really find somebody. And I'm just going to give a plug if it's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Go check
Yeah.
out Rare Essence Studio, Tempe, Arizona, because these are experts. These are women who have been doing hair for decades and they understand natural hair. And so for a woman who is just now embarking on this journey of becoming natural, it can be a very, effort that is definitely hard to get into because you don't necessarily understand it. And so when you have somebody that can walk you through that process, not only help you with the products, but okay, how do I deal with my hair in between appointments? Or how do I, if I decide not to come to the salon, let me learn my hair through this process so I can start taking care of it myself.
Yes.
Yeah, but it has to be an effort. Like, you know what I mean? With anything, we have to give effort, right?
Yeah. Without any outside support, because I'm just thinking about the influence of popular culture. You're not seeing that visible personality, celebrity representing that aesthetic look. And so I think I must say give props to Black women who take the initiative among themselves to really push that movement forward,
Absolutely.
right? Continuously and consistently, knowing that every time you go on the on the television, Netflix, whatever show it may be, the aesthetic that's being pushed is the complete opposite, right?
That's true. And
Um,
representation matters.
representation matters.
Yep.
Representation matters. And I've always said this, that I feel as though Black women have always had to dig inwards to find love of self, right? Because we're not live in a society
Mhm.
or in a world that naturally celebrates us in a wholesome way, right? I want to talk a little bit about your podcast and the things that you talk about, and if you can speak to that part of, I think the amazing ability of the Black woman to really, despite everything else, still find it within herself to still do that work
Right.
of being natural or finding self-love and self-care and taking care of the whole body.
Hmm. Well, I mean, my podcast, I guess I will call it.
No, yeah, definitely your podcast. Yes.
Yeah, so I speak more to the reason why we're here and understanding purpose. And I think that, we're only here for a short amount of time. And I find that so many people, they're still looking like, and don't get me wrong, like I feel like purpose is always evolving as we're becoming more of who we already are, right? Because we were who we are before we even came into our mother's womb. But when now we are shedding those layers from society, from even self, and even from our families that have put labels on us and expectations on us and even opinions on us, that sometimes it's hard for us to break free from those paradigms and those mindsets to actually like to become, right? And so what happens is a lot of times we will succumb to the pressure as opposed to become all of who we were already created to be. And the becoming is really just the awareness. We're becoming aware that we're rare. You already are. But even when we think about putting on these masks and these wigs and these weaves, and it's more layers for me. It's more layers. And so if we begin to take off and really look in the mirror and see ourselves naked, right? And then begin to love from that place and begin to say, who would I be if failure was not an option? Like if I couldn't fail, who would I be if I wasn't afraid that people would see me fall? What would I do? Right? If I were to close my eyes and say, you know, like if failure was not an option, if money was not even an issue, what would I be doing with my life? Right? And so I think that we come into this earth with such creativity and such, greatness, but it's stifled, it's hampered, it's controlled, right? And that's what the school system is for, right? To strip away the creativity so now we can use your genius to profit us. And so, when we understand that it's our creativity that allows us to express our greatness, but if that creativity is stifled and controlled, then we go through earth feeling so just choked, like, well, why can't I, do the thing that I really want to do? Oh, because my family member may say this, or, I might fall, or, somebody may feel that I'm doing too much. No, we got to get free. So for me, that is my passion. That is my heart. That is my desire that people begin to see themselves in their fullest of their greatness and embrace it and walk in it with unapologetic boldness.
And mind you that I'll go to the second point. But what process? I know it's different for everybody, but what's that process? What does that process look like of digging deep and embracing
that process?
That becoming.
The becoming.
What does that becoming look like?
If I were to break it down, I think the first thing is obviously awareness. And so you get to a place in your life, and I said this the other day, I was like, it's almost unfair to a degree that we come into families, we come into societies, we come into, cultures, and we don't realize what's toxic about it. We don't realize what, what I'm saying, what like all of the bad habits. And then we get to half our life and we realize, oh, I don't like these results.
And then you have to know.
And now I
offload it.
And even though what they say that I forgot what it says, trauma is not your fault, but healing is your responsibility. Right? Yeah. And so when we get to a place where we recognize we can only look inward. Yeah, no, those things did happen. I did go through that. I did come through this family. However, how do I now become? And so we have to look into the mirror. And I think so the first thing is the awareness to recognize these areas of my life are not serving me, whether it's my finances, whether it's my emotional health, whether it's my mental health, my physical health. What are the patterns that I keep habituating? Right. And then after the awareness, it's saying, let me get still so I can heal. Like we can't heal in the noise and in the clutter and in the confusion and all the chaos that the world is. It's the job. Look at the phone. We all got TV screens in our face, keeping us one app to the next, to the next, to the next. And so how do we ever come to self if we never get a chance to get still?
Yeah.
And listen. So for me, I'm a nature person, right? Take me up to Sedona and I could just sit by a creek all day long, right? And I think from that point, we can start catching the thought patterns, and recognize, okay, this is how I think. This is how I speak to myself. This is the reason why I have this habit and this behavior is because of my belief system. What do I believe about myself? Right. And so when we don't have the time to examine those belief systems, how can we ever become? Because we go from belief to behavior and from behavior to becoming and beholding. And if what we're beholding is not what we dream for ourselves, we have to go to the belief system and you have to get still. And then from the stillness and getting an awareness, some of this, and this is hard for a lot of people, it's the separation. And what I mean by separation, people reinforce who we've always been.
So we separate from that old self.
So if we keep on getting a reverberation of people reminding us of who we've always been, how can we ever become? And so sometimes that's hard because it's the people closest to us that we may need to, not that we're leaving them forever, But how can we help somebody else get free if we're stuck and we're bound? No, I got to get free first, and that means I need to separate myself, get out the boat, walk on water. You know what I mean? So now I can come back and help somebody else. So it's a major process, but it's so worthy of the work.
It's I think a lot of women are going through that process right now. Um, what about being pauses? Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not.
Octavia Rahim. Okay, Paul. I'm definitely gonna check that out. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for that. Do you find that women are, for the most part, going through that process of healing and connecting with self? Because I listen to spaces in the manosphere. I don't know why I do that. And there's this word that's thrown around a lot called accountability,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which makes the assumption that women are not taking account of their behaviors and attitudes and energies, that they bring into spaces that could be harmful. And so, do you see these changes happening within the community or among Black women?
I think there are pockets.
Pockets, okay.
Yeah. I can't say on a large scale like how that's happening. I know for the group of women that I'm in, like I have a women's group that we hold once a month and we're going through our own work, together. And so while I don't think that the masses are doing that, no. But I definitely feel there are a lot of women that are recognizing that
Yeah.
I am the artist and the architect of my life. And if I don't like it, then I need to go back to the blueprint, go back to the drawing board. And so there are definitely women that are on that journey, but I can't even tell you. I honestly feel like it's a small percentage.
You think so?
Yeah.
Mm.
In the large scheme of things.
And I agree, but I personally am thinking that women are quietly doing it, because I'm seeing that in the manifestation of women getting more spiritual, right? Everybody is getting into yoga now, and the what do we call it, the sages and all that fun stuff. And I'm thinking that it's not so much a fad, I'm hoping, right? And there's real work that is happening for those who are utilizing those techniques. So that gives me the impression that there is some work that's happening.
I mean, it's possible, and I'm not saying that it isn't happening, but the real litmus test is our community really coming together, right? Because I feel like we can do all the outward show, but are you really checking your energy? Are you really checking your attitude? You know what I'm saying? Like, because the more we come to love ourselves, the more you can only if you love someone else to the degree that you love yourself, right? And so when we look at all the things that are happening within our community, I feel like that really speaks to the individuals, that conscious level and that level of healing. And so when we stop seeing, a lot of the ills that plague us, we know it's actually happening. And so I'm not saying it's not, but it could just be so much beneath the surface. But we also have to look at the fact that we have generations
of work to do. Yes.
Of work to do. So to have the expectation that we'll see it in our lifetime may not necessarily be, all that realistic, but as long as we're doing that work, so we have that compound interest.
And so, mind you, we're not saying that if you wear wigs and weaves, meaning that you're not, in full recognition and tapped into who you are. But what I do believe is that going through that journey of self-love and becoming, I love that word, that process of becoming, I feel that naturally there's certain things about our natural full divine self that we embrace more, right?
Agreed.
The love of self and everything that we're able to embrace that and appreciate that more once we go through that process of becoming. But that does not mean to say at all.
Absolutely. I mean, and we can look at it in different ways. It's like, okay, well, if I choose to eat meat, do I not love myself? I know that's looking
Exactly.
at it from a whole
Yeah,
different
yes,
perspective, but it's
yeah,
like, okay, well, if I eat plants, and I know I'm loving myself through, what
yeah,
I'm feeding myself, like I still love myself, but I choose this.
yeah, yeah. Can we talk about that? I'm struggling. I'm struggling. So I made the decision to be plant based,
Mhm.
right? To have a plant based. Are you plant based diet? No.
No, girl.
Okay, okay, okay. So look, because I'm surrounded by people who are plant based, and I have a lot of friends who are plant based, and so I've made that decision. I know physically, emotionally, I feel better.
Hmm.
I know I feel better, right? But it's a daily struggle.
Yeah.
And so for me it's like, okay, am I, being true to myself, knowing that, this alternative, diet is healthier, but I fall short,
Hmm.
right? Or um me sticking to that lifestyle and diet is really showing that, all right, I'm really tapping into who I am, and I'm really caring about making that decision. It's tough.
Yeah. I mean, I can agree. Like, it's
It's a
definitely tough. I've
struggle.
had a book about being vegan for probably 15 years, girl. We
Yes.
ain't there yet,
It's
And so, I think that also speaks to we have different areas of our life that we're just, we're working
working on.
on, right? And the pressures are so great. We have to understand that even being in America, like there is probably no other country, that has so many fast food restaurants and these commercials and just all we're inundated. We don't even understand. We are just inundated with all this stuff, and we don't understand like why is the pressure so hard to like be plant based?
Mhm.
If you were back home, it may be so much
It
easier,
may be
right?
easier, yes. It may be
Because the
easier.
accessibility and the
Fresh fruits.
propaganda
Yeah.
and the you know what I'm saying, your
Yeah.
taste
Yeah.
buds,
Yes.
everything is
Yes.
different. So we have to understand that we are in a war zone to some
Mhm.
extent too, and give ourselves grace for
Mm.
that.
Thank you for saying that.
You're
I will
welcome.
give myself a lot of grace, a lot of grace. And so, as we get closer to that time, I want to just spin back, to the here. And do you feel as though there's this question that I want to ask? And I think we can wrap it up with that question. Do you feel as though the Black woman has much control over her the decision that she makes, right, of her aesthetic presentation, right? How she dresses, how she wears her hair. How much as a community, I'm not going to look at it, not the individual. This is not about the individual.
Mhm.
As a community, in how we make decision, what is fashionable, right? And what we accept.
Mhm.
How much of that is being influenced by outside forces, and how much of that is as a collective, as a community, we're like, no, this is something that's for us, that we embrace.
I mean, I think it's greatly influenced. I think it'll always be greatly influenced, but I think we still make that
We still
decision.
have to make a final decision, but is it based on what we think is true to us, or is it based on outside forces? We just talked about the food,
Right.
right? We
Right.
just talked about the food. It doesn't. I don't think it stops at the food.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I think that it's again, it's a war zone, right? And so there are the outside forces, and there's heavy, just push for us to not know ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, those decisions are impacted by that, I feel. But I feel that the more that we come into knowledge and the more that we educate ourselves and the more we choose what we choose because we know it's right and it
Mm-hmm.
feels right, those things will change. But we're in a world where,
Yeah.
it's a lot of things going
It's a
on.
lot. It's a lot. We got to pick our battles.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think?
What do I think? What do I think? I think that were we not in a culture, in a country, in a society where we're inundated with
Hmm.
images of what the Black woman should look like,
Hmm.
I think we would have naturally be drawn to what the ideal is, right? It would have been
Hmm.
easier for us to come to space of making a decision as a collective of what is ideal for us as a community.
Mhm.
Because many cultures, they have an understanding of how the women should look and dress, for weddings, right? For professional spaces, when you're in your family, most cultures have that understanding of what does that look for the women and the men, right? I think being part of an, individualistic society and culture
Mhm.
where we're told, influenced, I think that we've taken that on. Well, I'm dressing for myself, right? And it doesn't matter what you think,
Right.
right? But what are we doing for ourselves? Is that really enhancing who we are? Is that
Right.
really our natural true self? Or are we seeing and we thinking that we're making our own decision for ourselves?
We think. Yeah.
We think we're making our own
Mhm.
decision, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever controls the images controls the culture.
Mm.
Whoever controls the culture can control, everything that a person does if they allow themselves to be influenced so much so by that culture.
Yeah.
I don't have a TV. I haven't had a TV in my house in over 15 years because I saw them. I was like, oh, you ain't gonna brainwash me,
Mhm,
right? But
mhm.
I chose to think for myself and I understood that that was a tool to make me think a particular way. And I don't want images thrown at me to show me that this is what beauty is and you're not this, but you can get close to it. And then there's a profitability of me hating my, you know what I'm saying? Not
Yeah.
hate, but deciding not to choose myself to keep me away from myself so you can continue to control. So for
Yeah.
me, I just like, mm-mm. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we already know it's the control.
It's control. But I'm part of the fashion world. I'm part of the fashion industry, and so I know of a lot of people who are artistic, right? And they want to express themselves in different ways, right? And that is not to condemn, if you choose to wear your hair and express yourself in a more artistic way, you want that flexibility. This is not about that. I feel like the direction we're going with this conversation is if you are, you know, wearing your hair and dressing in a certain way, but mostly wearing your hair in a way in which you feel as though the opposite means that you're not attractive, right? Where you're not fully embracing your full self, where you feel that you may not be approved if your natural self is what you show forth to the world.
Right.
So I think what do you think of the overall,
Yeah.
direction that we're going with the
Yeah,
conversation?
I definitely feel like it goes back to what do you actually believe about yourself and why are you making those choices? And if there's a conscious level of making this choice, and I think there's nothing wrong with it, but I think it's more so speaking to the woman who, and the reason why I say this is because this is the experience I've had. Women come into salon 15, 60 years old, and they have suppressed where they're about to explode.
Mhm.
And they don't understand why, you know what I mean? And they realize like, oh, I've never seen my natural hair. And I didn't even know I was choosing this. It was just tradition,
Oh.
and so these are the women who are like now starting to realize I didn't even know this was my curl pattern. Oh my gosh, my hair is so beautiful. I believe the lie.
Oh,
So
that's
what
deep.
is
That's
it
deep.
that you have believed that has caused you to continue,
Exactly.
and
Yes,
so
yes, yes.
yeah, and it's just, again, it's the peer pressure and it's the thought of potentially losing your job. We're just now getting into the Crown Act where they cannot fire a Black woman for wearing her hair the way she chooses. We're talking about in the last 2-3 years.
Yeah.
So there were so many other forces that not only was it choice, but it was because I have to conform to keep my job. Right. So I
Mhm.
understand that. Though I never worked corporate America, there's a part of me that can't completely identify because I've been an entrepreneur all my life.
Yeah.
I've been able to wear my hair without anybody, enforcing anything on me or reprimanding me or, threatening for me to lose my livelihood.
And we haven't really talked too much about that. I didn't go into that because I felt as though that is assumed that there was people, we know the social pressures of not wearing natural, especially if you work in the corporate space. You're an anchor on television and so forth. That
Mm-hmm.
there is a presentation, of what is acceptable.
Right.
And so I don't know if you want to touch on that history at all, but I think there is an awareness and understanding that pressure does exist from outside forces of keeping your hair kept
Hmm.
a certain way to be acceptable.
Absolutely. And I can only speak from it from the standpoint of being a hairstylist and women coming in and really wanting to be natural, but kept stressing it has to be professional. It has to be professional because of they knew what they were going to face when they walked into, their job.
Mhm.
And so, I think that that pressure has somewhat lessened because of the Crown Act, right? But there's still just that even if they can't quote unquote fire me or let me go, but will I still have the opportunities? Can I, elevate in this company? So I'm sure that there are a lot more things that I wouldn't completely understand because I
Mhm.
haven't been in that
Be in
position.
that space, and not even yes, you yes, there is that concern about um going up that ladder, but also the concern about comments, I guess, from your coworkers, those strange questions, the touching
Hmm.
of your hair and all that stuff.
Right.
So we still have to deal with those kind of behaviors in that space. So we're having this conversation with that full understanding that that's the reality,
Right.
and not so much like, oh, you need to just take ownership and responsibility of how you see yourself, but acknowledging that where we're at with the conversation.
Right.
So we're gonna start wrapping it up. And I don't know why people are texting me instead of messaging. Putting the comments there. So we're gonna start wrapping up. Thank you very much. Thank you, Essence, for the conversation. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts about the space, about the hair, wearing our hair, the fight, and the work that
Hmm.
you've done in the valley. That's so much appreciated, and we still have a lot of work to be done.
Right.
And the mere fact that you said that um, an understanding of to what degree Black women are doing the work is based on the reflection of the community. That is my biggest takeaway,
Hmm.
right? Because you said, because we were talking about whether you feel or think or know to what degree Black women are, doing their spiritual work and becoming and healing. And you said, well, let's look at the community, right? Like if you're coming back to the community and we're not seeing that being reflected, that's it's not happening to the degree and the rate that is necessary.
Hmm.
And I think that is so key. Um, and just shows how much work needs to be done. So thank you for that.
Hmm.
Do you want to talk about your podcast, where people can see you,
Oh,
listen to
okay.
your podcast?
Well, first, thank you. Thank you for
Yes,
having me and
sure,
considering me
sure.
to have me on. It was an honor. And thank you for all who are watching. You can just find me at Essence China on all platforms on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, Essence China, ESSENCECHINA.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Join me again next week for another conversation that is incredibly helpful and important to our community and helping us to grow and be our best self. And hopefully, this information can help you in giving back and sharing the knowledge that we have shared this evening. Um, we will be having more conversations moving forward, not only about the hair but also the healing aspect. And I think I might invite her to come on in the future to talk more about that healing because that's a big topic that's
Mhm.
growing in our community. Particularly, did you see that TikTok of the men's healing group in LA that went
Mm-mm.
viral? It
Mm-mm.
was oh my gosh, what's that Jamaican lady that won? Well, she's of Jamaican background that won the Emmy recently. Oh my gosh, I'll tell you offline.
Okay.
But there's this. I'm gonna send to you. There's this TikTok that went viral
Okay.
of a group of men, about 50 men in LA, doing healing work.
Mm.
And there were some women like, look, I'm gonna park outside and wait for my husband to come out because they were so appreciative to see that the men are coming together and healing.
Yeah.
But it's powerful. It's powerful.
Send it to me,
Yeah, I'll
please.
send it to you. All right, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you for yet another Tuesday across the diaspora, and we will follow up next week.
Take
Bye.
care.